Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to talk to you about United States prisoners of war visiting Japan, or they were prisoners of war during World War II. The Japanese took them as POWs. But over the last 2 to 3 years, they have been visiting Japan to try to help amend any wounds or any old grudges that are still held between soldiers who fought on both sides, and to improve U.S.-Japan relations. And in 2015, a former naval aviator by the name of Charles Brown visited Kamakura, Japan. That's where he was prisoner of war, and he was a prisoner of war in Ofuna Naval Interrogation Center. But he said the only thing in that whole area that reminds him of that is that there are still bits and pieces of wood from the old watchtower. But other than that, everything is completely changed. Nothing reminds him of the Japan that he knew when he was a prisoner of war. And he said when he got to know the Japanese people there, he thought they don't want war. That the Americans and Japanese are more similar than you might think. That we both want what's best for our kids, both want what's best for our families, and they don't want to be waging war all the time. Not anymore. And he had pointed that out, and he was a naval aviator, and aviators were treated like criminals because they bombed Japan, and they were separated from the rest of their countrymen, and they underwent extremely harsh treatment. Okay, and then we're talking about the prisoners of war, the Bataan Death March. There were some Bataan Death March survivors that, about 12,000 of them, they were sent to Japan to work in steel factories or aircraft factories or mines, coal mines out in Japan. And one of them was a guy by the name of George Rogers. He's 96 years old. He's from Lynchburg, Virginia. He said he wasn't given much food at all, and he nearly dehydrated. He wasn't given water when he was needed. But he says there's no hard feelings on his part. He visited Japan in 2015, paid for by the Japanese government. Him and 8 other former American prisoners of war. And he said what he remembers mainly is the boat ride from the Philippines to Japan being a long, long trip. But he doesn't hold any grudges towards Japan. He really enjoyed his visit, and he said there's no hard feelings. He said when he got back from to the United States after the war ended, he said that the doctor didn't think he was gonna have children. Well, he's got 5 children, and the doctor didn't think he was going to live much longer. But he's 90. He was 96 back in 2015, so now he would be 98 years old, and he's still living. And he said there's no hard feelings, and it's still taboo to talk about the treatment of American prisoners of war in Japan, but it's not because there's such ill will towards Americans. That's not it. It's just in Japan's culture and it's a big thing in all Asian cultures, it's called saving face. But that has changed. There is now an area in Kyushu University, at a university in Kyushu, that talks about how they use some American prisoners of war as scientific experiments. So it's a slow but steady process. But the American prisoners of war who have visited Japan, they believe that Japan's apologies have been sincere and that they've been humble. Recently, about 2 years ago, the Mitsubishi Corporation has apologized to the American prisoners of war, and there's a 94-year-old former American POW living in California who believed that Mitsubishi's apology was humble and sincere. So the Mitsubishi Corporation, yes, they made the Zero fighters that flew for Japan during World War II, and they also used a lot of American prisoners of war as slaves. And there were about 27,000 American prisoners of war that were taken by Japan as prisoners of war, and about 40% of them died in captivity. But at the same time, Mitsubishi had a heartfelt, sincere apology and apologized to the American prisoners of war. And recently, this has been a sincere effort among the Japanese government to get the American prisoners of war to Japan, to visit Japan and show them that Japan has changed, that the Japan nowadays is not the Japan that they knew in World War II. And many American prisoners of war, when they visit Japan, they believe that, as I've said, they believe the apologies are sincere, but at the same time, they actually are happy that Japan has succeeded, that they came out of the ashes of poverty the way that they did. You know, there's no sense in holding a grudge. All holding a grudge or being bitter does is just drag you down. It doesn't drag the other person down. So I like what former South African President Nelson Mandela said: forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. So anyways, hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.